The massive chamber of the Galactic Council hummed with alien voices as delegates from across the galaxy gathered for an emergency session. Admiral Zektar of the Vraxian Empire stood at the center podium, his 8-foot frame covered in dark chitinous armor that reflected the chamber's blue lighting. His 4 eyes scanned the assembled representatives with cold calculation as he prepared to present what he believed would be the easiest conquest in galactic history. Honored council members, Zektar began, his voice carrying through the translation devices worn by each delegate. I bring before you today a proposal for the immediate annexation of a primitive world, designated as Sol 3, locally known as Earth. Murmurs rippled through the chamber as holographic displays materialized above each delegate's seat, showing images of a blue and green planet orbiting a yellow star. The planet looked peaceful from space, its swirling white clouds hiding the bustling civilization below. Counselor Thys of the Aquatic Federation raised one of her many tentacles to signal a question. Her translucent blue skin pulsed with bioluminescent patterns as she spoke. Admiral Zektar, what makes this world suitable for harvest? Our records show it supports carbon-based life forms. Indeed, Counselor Thys, Zektar replied with what passed for a smile among his species. The inhabitants call themselves humans. They are bipedal carbon-based creatures with surprisingly short lifespans of merely 70 to 80 standard years. Our intelligence gathering has revealed a species locked in primitive technological development. The holographic displays shifted to show crude rockets launching from Earth's surface, ancient by galactic standards. Images of human cities appeared next, showing buildings that barely scraped the sky and transportation systems that moved along predetermined paths on the ground. As you can see, Zektar continued, their most advanced propulsion systems rely on chemical combustion. They have achieved basic nuclear fission, but show no evidence of fusion technology or antimatter manipulation. Their space presence is limited to a few small orbital platforms and occasional missions to their natural satellite. Delegate Core of the Silicon Collective, a crystalline being whose body rang like bells when he moved, chimed in with skepticism. What of their defensive capabilities? Even primitive species can prove troublesome if they possess adequate military organization. Zektar's expression grew even more confident. This is perhaps the most remarkable aspect of human civilization, Delegate Core. Our surveillance has revealed that these creatures are hopelessly divided among themselves. They have separated their single world into nearly 200 different political entities, each claiming sovereignty over portions of the planet's surface. New images flashed across the displays, showing human conflicts throughout their history. Battles raged across continents as humans fought humans with weapons that seemed laughably primitive to the assembled aliens. They waged constant warfare against each other using kinetic projectile weapons and chemical explosives, Zektar explained. Their largest military conflicts involve hundreds of thousands of their own kind, fighting over territorial disputes or ideological differences. They cannot even agree on basic resource distribution among their own species. The chamber fell silent as delegates processed this information. Throughout galactic history, species that achieved interplanetary capability almost always did so through unified planetary governments. The idea of a spacefaring species maintaining dozens of separate nations was nearly incomprehensible. Counselor Veltar of the Energy Consortium, a being of pure plasma contained within a specialized suit, pulsed with curiosity. How do they maintain technological development while expending resources on internal conflict? An excellent question, Zektar replied. It appears that their competitive nature drives rapid advancement in certain areas, particularly weapons technology and communication systems. However, this same competitiveness prevents them from achieving the global cooperation necessary for effective defense against external threats. The Admiral activated another set of displays showing Earth's communication networks. They have developed a primitive but extensive information sharing system they call the Internet, but they use it primarily for entertainment and commerce rather than coordinated defense planning. Counselor Thys pulsed with concern. What of their population centers? Large cities can become troublesome during occupation phases, even when defended by primitive weapons. Zektar dismissed her worries with a gesture. Their population centers are poorly defended and highly concentrated. Over half their population lives in urban areas with minimal hardening against orbital bombardment. Their military forces are scattered among various national entities, with no unified command structure. The holographic displays now showed detailed intelligence reports compiled by Vraxian scouts who had observed Earth from hidden positions throughout the solar system. The data painted a picture of a species so busy fighting itself that it had never developed serious defenses against external attack. Our analysis indicates that Earth's total military capability could not effectively resist even a single Vraxian battle group, Zektar stated with absolute certainty. Their most powerful weapons are crude nuclear devices that require ground-based launch platforms or slow atmospheric vehicles for delivery. They have no orbital defenses, no energy shielding, and no faster-than-light communication capability. Delegate Core chimed thoughtfully. What resistance timeline does your military staff project? Conservative estimates suggest complete planetary surrender within 72 hours of initial contact, Zektar replied. More realistic projections indicate surrender within 24 hours, once they understand the futility of resistance. These creatures appear to be fundamentally logical despite their primitive state. When faced with overwhelming technological superiority, they should calculate that surrender offers their best chance of survival. The chamber buzzed with discussion as delegates consulted with their advisors and reviewed the intelligence data. Never before had the Council encountered a species so perfectly suited for rapid integration into the galactic economy. Earth's population was large enough to provide substantial labor resources, but divided enough to prevent effective resistance. What of their natural resources? Asked Councillor Vilnara of the Mining Guild, her rocky exoskeleton clicking as she shifted position. Substantial, Zektar confirmed. Large deposits of rare metals, vast water reserves, and a remarkably stable biosphere capable of supporting multiple galactic species. The planet could serve as an excellent agricultural world once the human population is properly managed. The final question came from High Counselor Zenthak, the ancient leader whose species had founded the Galactic Council millennia ago. His telepathic voice reached every mind in the chamber. Admiral Zektar, your intelligence assessment appears thorough, but history teaches caution when evaluating new species. Are you certain these humans pose no unexpected capabilities? Zektar straightened to his full imposing height. High Counselor, I stake my career and my life on this assessment. The humans of Earth represent the least threatening conquest target the Vraxian Empire has ever identified. They lack unity, advanced technology, or any defensive capability that could challenge even our oldest starships. The voting commenced immediately. Delegate after delegate approved Operation Terran Harvest, seeing it as a routine annexation of a primitive world that would benefit from galactic civilization. The final tally was unanimous. 47 votes in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions. High Counselor Zenthak's mental voice carried a tone of finality. Admiral Zektar, the Galactic Council hereby authorizes the annexation of Sol 3. You may proceed with standard conquest protocols. May this operation bring swift integration and minimal casualties. As the chamber emptied, Admiral Zektar remained at the podium, already planning his triumph. In 3 standard cycles, his fleet would arrive at Earth, and these humans would learn their place in the galactic order. It would be, he was certain, the easiest victory of his distinguished military career. On Earth, billions of humans continued their daily lives, completely unaware that their fate had just been decided in a chamber light years away. They argued about politics, worried about their jobs, raised their children, and fell in love, never suspecting that ships carrying their conquerors were already beginning the journey toward their small blue world. Lieutenant Colonel Jake Morrison was reviewing routine satellite data at NORAD when the first anomalies appeared on his screens. The coffee in his mug grew cold as he stared at readings that made no sense according to everything he knew about physics. Massive objects were materializing in Earth's atmosphere, each one the size of a city block and moving with impossible precision. Rodriguez, get over here, Jake called to Specialist Amy Rodriguez, who was monitoring communications from her station across the command center. Tell me these readings are wrong. Amy hurried over, her eyes widening as she saw the data scrolling across Jake's monitors. Sir, those signatures are showing up on every tracking system we have. Whatever they are, they're real and they're big. Within minutes, reports flooded in from observation posts around the globe. 12 massive ships had appeared simultaneously over major population centers. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing, and 7 other cities now had alien vessels hanging in the sky like dark clouds of metal and energy. The ships themselves were unlike anything from human science fiction. They appeared organic in some ways, with flowing curves that suggested they had been grown rather than built. Yet their surfaces gleamed with technological complexity that hurt to look at directly. Energy patterns danced along their hulls in colors that human eyes struggled to process. At the Pentagon, General Patricia Hayes was coordinating with leaders worldwide when the transmission came through on every frequency at once. Radio, television, internet, satellite communications, even emergency service channels all carried the same message delivered in perfect English, Mandarin, Spanish, Arabic, and dozens of other human languages. People of Earth, the voice was melodic but cold, carrying an authority that seemed to resonate in the bones of everyone who heard it. I am Admiral Zektar of the Vraxian Empire, speaking for the Galactic Council. Your world has been selected for integration into galactic civilization. You have 24 hours to surrender your military forces and prepare for peaceful occupation. Resistance will result in unnecessary casualties. Compliance will ensure your survival and eventual prosperity under galactic law. The message repeated every hour for the rest of the day, broadcast from the alien ships with technology that overpowered every attempt to jam or block it. Human governments around the world went into emergency sessions as panic spread through major cities and stock markets crashed worldwide. President Helen Carter convened an emergency session with world leaders through secure video links. The most powerful people on Earth found themselves facing a situation that no amount of political experience had prepared them for. The question before us is simple. President Carter addressed the assembled leaders. Do we surrender to unknown aliens who offer vague promises of prosperity? Or do we stand together as one species defending our home? Prime Minister David Williams of the United Kingdom spoke first. Our military analysts believe these ships represent technology centuries ahead of our own capabilities. Resistance might be suicide. Surrender might also be suicide, replied President Chen Wei of China. We know nothing about these creatures or their intentions beyond conquest. As world leaders debated, something remarkable was happening in the streets of every major city. Instead of panic and chaos, humans were displaying a unity that surprised even themselves. In New York, people from every background and nationality gathered in Central Park, not to flee but to stand together and look up at the alien ship hovering overhead. The first test of human resolve came at dawn the next day, when Admiral Zektar's deadline expired without surrender. The alien ground assault began with surgical precision, as drop pods launched from the orbiting ships. Each pod contained a squad of Vraxian warriors, 8-foot-tall creatures whose chitinous armor made them look like nightmare insects walking upright. The first pods landed outside Washington, D.C., where Captain Ryan Hughes commanded a small Marine unit stationed at a forward observation post. His orders from command were to observe and report enemy capabilities, then fall back to defensive positions. But as Captain Hughes watched the alien warriors emerge from their pods, their plasma rifles glowing with deadly energy, he made a decision that would echo across the entire planet. Listen up. Marines, Hughes told his squad as the aliens began their approach. Those things up there think they know us. They think we're just another species waiting to roll over and play dead. Today we show them what humans do when someone threatens our home. The engagement that followed lasted only 20 minutes, but those 20 minutes changed everything. The Vraxian squad approaching Hughes's position expected to encounter primitive resistance that their advanced weapons and armor could easily overcome. They had conquered dozens of worlds using the same tactics, and their intelligence suggested that humans would be no different. They were wrong. Private Lisa Chang, a demolitions expert from California, was the first to notice that the aliens' energy shields flickered for a fraction of a second each time they fired their plasma weapons. She passed this information to Sergeant Mike Torres, who had been observing the aliens' movement patterns through his scope. They move like they've never faced real opposition, Torres reported to Captain Hughes. Overconfident, predictable formations. They're not expecting us to fight back effectively. What happened next would be studied by military historians for decades to come. 12 humans armed with conventional weapons faced 40 alien warriors equipped with technology that should have made the outcome inevitable. But the aliens had never encountered an enemy that combined tactical flexibility with absolute determination to protect their homeland. Hughes coordinated his squad's movements with hand signals, using the terrain and their knowledge of local geography to maximum advantage. When the aliens advanced in formation, expecting their shields and superior firepower to overwhelm human resistance, they instead found themselves facing an enemy that refused to fight by expected rules. Chang used improvised explosives to collapse part of a hillside, temporarily separating the alien force. Torres picked off individual aliens during the brief moments when their shields flickered, while other Marines used coordinated fire to force the aliens into positions where their technological advantages became liabilities. The turning point came when Rodriguez discovered that human radio frequencies could interfere with alien communication systems. By broadcasting static on specific channels, she managed to jam the aliens' coordination, turning their organized assault into confused chaos. When the engagement ended, 37 alien warriors lay dead while all 12 Marines had survived with only minor injuries. The victory seemed impossible by every measure of technological comparison, but it had happened nonetheless. News of Hughes's victory spread through human communication networks faster than the aliens could react. Similar engagements were taking place around the globe, and similar results were being reported. In Tokyo, a group of civilians led by an office worker named Ken Nakamura had used their knowledge of the city's subway system to trap an entire alien squad underground. In London, former military officer Danny Fletcher organized local residents into an effective guerrilla force that harassed alien positions using nothing but determination and intimate knowledge of their neighborhood. Street's Dr. Patricia Bell, a quantum physicist at MIT, made a discovery that would prove crucial to human survival. While examining debris from a destroyed alien weapon, she realized that the technology operated on frequencies that human equipment could potentially disrupt. Every cell tower, every radio transmitter, every piece of communication equipment we have, she explained to the hastily assembled Defense Council, we can modify them to interfere with alien systems. Their technology is advanced, but it's also vulnerable to the kind of electromagnetic interference we can generate. As night fell on the first day of invasion, Admiral Zektar found himself staring at casualty reports that challenged everything he thought he knew about warfare. These humans were not surrendering as predicted. Instead, they were fighting with a creativity and determination that his forces had never encountered. The invasion that was supposed to end in 24 hours had only just begun, and already the Vraxian Empire was learning that their intelligence about humans had been catastrophically wrong. Admiral Zektar stood before his command hologram displaying casualty reports that made no sense according to every military manual in the Vraxian Empire. 3 days into what should have been a simple occupation, his ground forces had lost over 30% of their strength to an enemy that barely possessed spaceflight capability. Sir, Commander Vrex approached cautiously, his chitinous armor bearing fresh scorch marks from a failed assault on a human stronghold. The humans are not fighting like any species in our database. They adapt their tactics faster than we can counter them. Zektar's 4 eyes focused on his subordinate with growing anger. They are primitives with chemical weapons and metal projectiles. How can they possibly challenge plasma technology and energy shields? They seem to learn from each engagement, sir. When we deploy a new weapon or tactic, they find ways to counter it within hours. Their communication systems allow them to share successful resistance methods across their entire planet, almost instantly. The Admiral's pride stung more than his tactical losses. Throughout his military career, he had conquered 17 worlds for the Vraxian Empire. Every previous enemy had followed predictable patterns of resistance that could be overcome through superior firepower and technology. These humans fought like nothing he had ever encountered. Deploy the war machines, Zektar ordered, his voice carrying the authority of desperation masked as confidence. If these creatures want to test themselves against real military power, we will show them what happens when primitives challenge the galactic order. The mechanical walkers that descended from the orbiting ships were marvels of Vraxian engineering. Each one stood 50 feet tall, armored with energy-resistant alloys and equipped with plasma cannons capable of leveling entire city blocks. Their legs moved with hydraulic precision while their sensor arrays could detect human life signs through solid concrete. Staff Sergeant Mike Peterson crouched in the ruins of what had been downtown Chicago, watching the alien war machines stride through the city streets like metallic giants from humanity's worst nightmares. The machines had arrived 2 hours ago and were systematically destroying every building that might harbor human resistance fighters. Colonel Morrison, this is Peterson, he spoke into his radio, maintaining radio silence protocols that had kept human forces coordinated, despite alien jamming attempts. I'm observing the war machines from the Willis Tower rubble. These things are big, but I think I see a weakness. Peterson had been an Army combat engineer for 15 years before the invasion began. His job was building and destroying structures, which meant he understood how weight and balance affected large constructions. As he watched the alien walkers move through the city, his experienced eye noticed something that their designers had overlooked. They're top-heavy, Peterson continued his report to Colonel Morrison, who had assumed command of regional resistance forces after the regular chain of command collapsed. All that armor and weaponry is concentrated in the upper sections, but look at the joint connections where the legs meet the body. The weakness Peterson identified seemed almost impossible to exploit. The leg joints were heavily armored and positioned 40 feet above ground level. Conventional human weapons could barely scratch the walker's armor, and getting close enough to target specific components would be suicide. But Peterson was thinking like an engineer rather than a traditional soldier. I need access to the city's underground tunnel system and about 6 pieces of construction equipment, Peterson told Morrison. If we can coordinate simultaneous attacks on the leg joints while undermining the ground beneath these machines, physics will do the rest. The plan that emerged from Peterson's observations required precise timing across 12 different teams scattered throughout the city. Each team would target one war machine, using a combination of underground explosives and coordinated surface attacks aimed at the vulnerable joint mechanisms. The operation began at dawn on the 4th day of invasion. While alien sensors focused on detecting surface threats, human engineers used maintenance tunnels and subway lines to position charges beneath each war machine's path. The explosives were crude by alien standards, but they were precisely placed to create unstable ground conditions. At exactly 600 hours, the coordinated attack commenced. Teams of humans emerged from hidden positions to target the war machine's leg joints with everything they could carry. Rocket-propelled grenades, improvised explosives, and concentrated small arms fire struck the mechanical joints, while underground charges detonated simultaneously. The first war machine to fall sent shockwaves through both human and alien forces. The 50-foot giant wavered for a moment as its right leg joint failed, then toppled forward with a crash that could be heard for miles. Its fall triggered a chain reaction as debris from the collapse damaged nearby machines and created obstacles that disrupted the aliens' careful formation. Within 6 hours, all 12 war machines deployed to Chicago lay destroyed or disabled. The psychological impact on Vraxian forces was immediate and devastating. Their most advanced ground weapons had been defeated by creatures they still considered primitive. The victory in Chicago was repeated in cities around the world as human forces shared Peterson's tactics through their global communication networks. In Moscow, resistance fighters used the city's extensive metro system to similar effect. In Tokyo, teams of volunteers coordinated subway line explosions that created sinkholes beneath advancing war machines. Captain Susan Hayes commanded the International Space Station when the invasion began, trapped in orbit with nowhere to run and no way to reach the surface safely, as she watched the war machines falling in cities around the world through the station's observation windows. She realized that humans in space might have their own role to play in the resistance. Control, this is ISS. Hayes radioed to the emergency command center that NASA had established in a bunker beneath Houston. We're observing the alien flagship from our orbital position. It's maintaining a stationary position directly above the North Pole. The alien command ship was massive beyond human comprehension, easily 10 times larger than any human spacecraft ever constructed. Its position above the magnetic pole seemed to provide some kind of technological advantage for coordinating the invasion forces below. Susan, came the voice of Director James Martinez from Mission Control. We need you to maintain observation and report any changes in the alien fleet. Disposition, Hayes made a decision that would have been impossible to explain to anyone who had not watched their home planet under attack for 4 days. Negative control. We're going to do more than observe. The plan that Hayes proposed to her crew was insane by every measure of rational thought. They would use the space station's remaining fuel reserves to alter their orbit and ram the alien flagship. The impact would cause minimal physical damage to such a massive vessel, but it might disrupt their command systems long enough for human forces on the surface to gain some advantage. The aliens think they understand us, Hayes explained to her crew of international astronauts. They think we're just another species that will surrender when faced with superior force. Let's show them what humans do when we have nothing left to lose. Meanwhile, on Earth, the internet had become humanity's secret weapon in ways the aliens never anticipated. Every successful tactic developed in one location was shared globally within hours. A technique for jamming alien communications discovered in Brazil was being used in Russia before the day ended. Defensive strategies tested in Australia guided resistance efforts in Africa. Commander Nathan Wright coordinated global cyber warfare from a bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. His team had discovered that the aliens relied heavily on centralized command structures, with their entire fleet operating from the massive ship above the North Pole. We can't reach that command ship with any weapons we have, Wright explained to assembled military leaders through encrypted communications. But we don't need to destroy it. We just need to talk to it. The virus that Wright's team developed was unlike anything in human cyber warfare history. Instead of attacking computer systems directly, it was designed to propagate through the alien communication networks and create feedback loops that would overload their central processing systems. The upload will require a direct physical connection to their primary network, Wright continued. Someone needs to get inside that command ship and establish a hardwired link to their central computer system. As the fourth day of invasion ended, both sides were preparing for desperate measures. The aliens had realized that their easy conquest had become a prolonged war against an enemy that refused to follow any known pattern of defeat. Humans had learned that their determination and adaptability could overcome technological disadvantages, but they also understood that time was running out. The war for Earth was about to enter its most dangerous phase, where both species would discover exactly how far they were willing to go to achieve their goals. The plan that emerged from 6 days of desperate human cooperation would have been impossible for any other species the Galactic Council had ever encountered. It required perfect timing across 3 different battle zones and coordination between military units that had never worked together before the invasion began. Major Chris Thompson stood in the underground command center beneath the Pentagon, surrounded by maps and communication equipment that connected him to resistance fighters across the entire planet. The former Army Ranger had spent his career planning small unit operations, but now he was coordinating the largest simultaneous military action in human history. All units, this is Command Central, Thompson spoke into his headset, knowing that his words were being heard in bombed-out buildings and hidden bunkers on every continent. Operation Unity begins in exactly 12 hours. Every resistance cell, every military unit, every group of armed civilians will attack at the same moment. The goal was not to destroy the alien forces scattered across Earth's surface. Human leaders had realized that such a task was beyond their current capabilities. Instead, they would force every alien unit to call for help from their command ship at exactly the same time, overloading the communication networks that kept the invasion coordinated. Commander Angela Foster sat in the cockpit of a modified cargo plane flying at maximum altitude above the Atlantic Ocean. The former NASA test pilot had volunteered to lead a squadron of civilian aircraft, equipped with Dr. Bell's frequency disruption technology. Her job was to create electromagnetic chaos in the upper atmosphere that would mask the approach of humanity's most desperate gambit. Formation Alpha, this is Foster. She radioed to the 19 other aircraft following her through the thin air at the edge of space. Remember, we only get one shot at this. When the ground attack begins, we deploy the disruption field and maintain it for exactly 30 minutes. The electromagnetic pulse generators mounted beneath each aircraft were crude compared to alien technology, but they had been designed with human ingenuity and desperation. When activated simultaneously, they would create a corridor of radio interference that alien sensors might mistake for natural atmospheric disturbance. 200 miles above the Earth's surface, retired astronaut Captain Rick Davis made final preparations for the most dangerous mission any human had ever attempted. His spacecraft was a hastily modified cargo vessel, barely capable of reaching orbital altitude, equipped with life support systems that might last 6 hours if everything worked perfectly. Control. This is Davis, he radioed to the emergency command center. The upload virus is loaded and ready for deployment. Linda and I are prepared for approach to the alien command ship. Linda Parker had been a space tourist before the invasion began, paying millions for a brief trip to orbit aboard a commercial spacecraft. Now she was humanity's backup plan, carrying duplicate copies of the virus that Commander Wright's team had developed to disrupt alien computer systems. Rick, the connection has to be physical. Dr. Bell's voice crackled through the radio from her laboratory bunker beneath MIT. Their security systems will detect and block any wireless transmission. You need to get inside their ship and establish a direct link to their central computer. The assault began at exactly 00:00 GMT on the 7th day of invasion. Every human military asset that remained operational launched simultaneous attacks. In New York, National Guard units emerged from subway tunnels to assault alien positions in Central Park. In London, SAS teams coordinated with armed civilians to attack alien strongholds along the Thames River. Across Africa, Asia, and Australia, resistance fighters who had been hiding in forests and mountains suddenly appeared to strike at alien outposts. The attacks were not expected to succeed in traditional military terms, but they served their purpose perfectly. Within minutes, alien communication networks around the globe were flooded with status reports, requests for reinforcement, and calls for tactical support. Every alien commander on Earth was trying to contact the command ship simultaneously, creating exactly the chaos that human planners had hoped for. At that precise moment, Angela Foster's squadron deployed their electromagnetic disruption field high above the Atlantic Ocean. The interference created a narrow corridor of confused radio signals that extended from Earth's atmosphere to the edge of space. "Davis, you are clear for approach," Foster radioed as her instruments showed the disruption field was operating at maximum effectiveness. "You have a 30-minute window before we run out of power." Davis fired his spacecraft's engines and began the most dangerous journey any human had ever attempted. The alien command ship hung in space above the North Pole like a metal moon, its surface covered with weapon systems that could vaporize his tiny vessel with a single shot. The approach took 18 minutes of careful maneuvering through the ship's defensive perimeter. Davis had studied the vessel's patrol patterns for days, looking for gaps in their sensor coverage. The electromagnetic disruption helped mask his heat signature, but he was still flying a primitive human spacecraft toward the most advanced military vessel in the galaxy. "I'm at the outer hull," Davis reported as his ship made contact with the alien vessel's surface. "Beginning breach procedures now." The cutting tools Davis carried were designed for emergency spacecraft repairs, never intended for hostile boarding operations. It took precious minutes to burn through the alien hull material, while Linda Parker monitored their dwindling life support reserves. "We're inside," Davis reported as they floated through the hole he had cut in the ship's outer wall, moving toward what we think is the central computer core. The interior of the alien ship was a maze of corridors that seemed to flow like organic tunnels rather than constructed passages. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows as Davis and Parker made their way deeper into the vessel, following maps created from long-distance observations and educated guesses about alien technology. They encountered their first alien crew member near what appeared to be a command center. The creature was tall and insect-like, similar to the ground troops that had been fighting on Earth, but with different coloring and equipment that suggested a technical rather than military role. The brief firefight that followed was desperate and chaotic. Davis and Parker carried only sidearms intended for emergency use, while the alien had access to plasma weapons and body armor. But the creature had never expected to fight inside its own ship, and was not prepared for the desperation of humans defending their homeworld. "The computer core is through here," Parker called out as they reached what appeared to be the ship's central processing area. The room was filled with technology that hurt to look at directly, crystalline structures that pulsed with energy and information streams that flowed through transparent tubes like liquid light. Davis connected the upload device to what appeared to be a primary data port while Parker stood guard at the entrance. The virus began transferring immediately, but alien security systems detected the intrusion within seconds. "They're trying to cut the connection," Davis reported as warning lights flashed throughout the chamber. "Their security protocols are attempting to isolate the infected systems." The solution required a sacrifice that neither Davis nor Parker had expected to make: The upload would only succeed if maintained by direct human contact with the alien computer systems. "Linda, get back to the ship," Davis ordered as he placed his hands on the crystalline interface structures. "Someone needs to report our success or failure." "Rick, the electrical feedback will kill you," Parker protested. "Maybe," Davis replied as energy began flowing through his body from the alien computers. "But the virus is propagating through their network. I can feel it spreading to every system on this ship." The effects were immediate and devastating to alien operations worldwide. Communication systems failed across the entire invasion fleet. Weapon systems powered down automatically as their targeting computers crashed. The coordination that had made the Vraxians an effective military force collapsed into chaos as individual units lost contact with their commanders. But Admiral Zektar, watching his carefully planned conquest dissolve into complete failure, made one final decision that threatened to destroy everything humans had fought to save. If the Vraxian Empire could not have Earth, then no one would. He manually activated the planet-killer weapons that had been held in reserve, weapons so powerful they were banned by galactic law. "Commander Vrex," Zektar ordered his subordinate, "initiate extinction protocol. If these humans want to fight, they can die fighting." The massive weapons began charging for a final strike that would crack Earth's planetary core and render the world uninhabitable for any species. The countdown showed 18 minutes until firing, and every human on the planet was about to learn whether their desperate resistance had saved their world or merely delayed its destruction. Colonel Jake Morrison watched from his command post in the Colorado Mountains as massive energy signatures began building aboard the alien ships hanging in Earth's atmosphere. The readings on his instruments showed power levels that defied human understanding, weapons charging for what could only be a final devastating attack. "Sir," Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez called from her monitoring station, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. "I'm detecting massive energy buildup from all 12 alien vessels. Whatever they're preparing to do, it's going to be big." Morrison had spent 7 days watching humanity fight against impossible odds, and now it seemed that all their sacrifice and determination might end in planetary destruction. The virus upload had crippled alien ground forces, but it appeared that Admiral Zektar still retained control of his most devastating weapons. 18 minutes remained on the countdown that alien systems were broadcasting on all frequencies. A final message of doom delivered in every human language. The planet-killer weapons would fire simultaneously, cracking Earth's core and rendering the world uninhabitable within hours. Then Rodriguez detected something new on her long-range sensors. "Sir, I'm reading massive hyperspace signatures approaching from the outer solar system." Multiple contacts moving fast. The ships that emerged from faster-than-light travel were unlike anything the Vraxians had brought to Earth. These vessels were sleek and elegant, bearing markings that indicated authority rather than conquest. They moved with precision and purpose as they surrounded the Vraxian fleet in a formation that spoke of overwhelming military superiority. "This is Admiral Cathara of the Galactic Council Enforcement Division." A new voice broadcast across all communication channels. "Admiral Zektar, you are commanded to stand down immediately and prepare to be boarded for violations of 17 interstellar laws, including unauthorized warfare and prohibited weapon deployment." The tension in the Colorado Command Center was thick enough to cut as human observers watched 2 alien fleets face each other in the space above their world. Morrison understood that Earth had become the center of a conflict between different alien factions, but he had no way of knowing which side represented salvation and which represented continued destruction. "Admiral Zektar," Cathara continued her transmission, "the species you have attacked without authorization has demonstrated advanced strategic capabilities and unified planetary defense. Your classification of them as primitive was clearly erroneous, making this invasion an unprovoked act of aggression against a sovereign species." On the Vraxian flagship, Admiral Zektar faced a choice between surrender and mutual destruction. His planet-killer weapons were nearly charged, but the Council ships surrounding his fleet possessed firepower that could annihilate his forces before those weapons could discharge. "Council ships will withdraw immediately," Zektar broadcast in response, his voice carrying the desperation of a military commander whose career was ending in disgrace. "This is a legal annexation authorized by proper galactic procedures." "Negative, Admiral. We have reviewed the authorization records. This invasion was conducted based on falsified intelligence reports and exceeded the scope of any legitimate council mandate. You will surrender your vessels immediately or face the consequences of resisting lawful Enforcement Division Authority, Zektars. Response was to open fire on the nearest council ship. The battle that followed lasted exactly 18 minutes and 14 seconds. Human observers watched in awe as weapons that made their most powerful nuclear arsenals look like firecrackers lit up the sky above Earth. The council ships moved with fluid grace, while Vraxian vessels fought with desperate aggression, but the outcome was never in doubt. The Vraxian flagship, along with its planet-killer weapons, was vaporized in a brilliant flash that briefly turned night to day across half the planet. The remaining alien ships surrendered after their command vessel was destroyed, their weapons powering down as council forces took control. 3 days later, Admiral Cathera requested permission to land at what remained of the United Nations headquarters in New York. The first official diplomatic contact between humanity and the legitimate galactic government took place in a conference room hastily cleared of debris from the week-long war. President Helen Carter sat across from a being that looked nothing like the insect-like Vraxians who had tried to conquer Earth. Admiral Cathera appeared almost human in basic shape, but her skin had a subtle blue tint and her eyes were larger than human proportions. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that suggested a completely different vocal structure. President Carter, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I formally apologize for the unprovoked attack on your world. Admiral Zektar acted without proper authorization, based on intelligence assessments that were both incomplete and incorrectly analyzed. What happens now? President Carter asked, flanked by surviving leaders from around the globe who had coordinated Earth's defense. Admiral Cathera's expression, filtered through translation technology, seemed to convey something resembling respect mixed with concern. Now we must discuss humanity's future relationship with galactic civilization. Your species has demonstrated capabilities that our initial assessments completely failed to recognize. Dr. Patricia Bell, now serving as humanity's chief science advisor after her crucial role in developing anti-alien technology, leaned forward with curiosity. What capabilities are you referring to, Admiral? Dr. Bell, in 7 days your species accomplished what most civilizations require decades to achieve. You demonstrated strategic coordination across your entire planet within hours of first contact. You adapted tactically to superior technology using nothing but creativity and determination. Most remarkably, you displayed voluntary self-sacrifice for collective survival on a scale we have never observed. Colonel Morrison, still wearing battle gear from the final defensive operations, asked the question that weighed on everyone's mind. Are you saying we passed some kind of test? Colonel Morrison, what your species accomplished during this invasion was not a test but a revelation. The Galactic Council has encountered thousands of intelligent species over millions of years. Most surrender immediately when faced with superior technology. Those that resist typically do so through superior numbers or defensive advantages. Your people fought using pure tactical innovation and unity of purpose. President Carter pressed for specifics. What exactly is the Council offering humanity? Full membership with immediate rights and protections, access to galactic technology, trade networks, and diplomatic immunity. In return, humanity would contribute to galactic defense initiatives, a role for which your species appears uniquely qualified, given your demonstrated abilities. The discussion that followed lasted for hours as human leaders grappled with the implications of joining a galactic community they had never known existed. The decision was made easier by the knowledge that isolation was no longer possible, now that Earth's location and capabilities were known throughout the galaxy. The vote among world leaders was unanimous, not because the choice was simple, but because humanity had learned something crucial about themselves during the invasion. They were stronger as a unified species than as divided nations, and that unity could extend beyond Earth to encompass their place in a larger cosmic community. 6 months later, the first human crews reported for duty aboard Galactic Council vessels. The former Vraxian commanders who had once dismissed humans as primitive now requested human tactical advisors for their own military operations. Word had spread throughout the galaxy about the species that had defeated a technologically superior invasion force through nothing but determination and creative thinking. The Vraxian Empire, after paying massive reparations to Earth for the unauthorized invasion, officially petitioned the Council for human military consultation in their ongoing border conflicts. The species they had tried to conquer was now advising them on how to defend their own territory. In the halls of the Galactic Council, when new species were discovered and evaluated for contact, the procedures had changed. The question was no longer simply about technological advancement, but about something harder to measure and more dangerous to underestimate. Admiral Zektar's final report, recovered from the wreckage of his flagship, became required reading at every military academy in the galaxy. His last entry contained a single line that summarized everything the galactic community had learned from the failed invasion of Earth. Never underestimate humans. They fight like they have something worth dying for. The galaxy had learned to respect that difference, and humanity had learned they were never truly alone in the universe. They had earned their place among the stars through courage, unity, and the unshakable belief that home was worth any sacrifice required to defend it.